This is the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast, where divorce coach Corey Shapiro helps you get creative and not reactive in your divorce. Tune in now to get the support you need to make it through this difficult time. Here's your divorce coach, Corey Shapiro.
Welcome to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. I'm your friendly divorce coach, Corey Shapiro. I'm here to help you become a little bit more creative, a little less reactive in your divorce. And I know that's hard to do. Have you seen my owls? They are a reminder to bring our wisest self when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling anxiety, when we're angry. Can we take a step back and adjust and bring our wisest self forward? The owls are a reminder to do that. We got a good question today. It's about fear moving on from a bad marriage, but also the fear of unknown and the impact of the divorce on children. We have divorce news that discusses a celebrity middle ground that might be helpful idea for some people. And we end with Coaching Corner. I'm going to give you some actionable information to take with you so you can move on in your divorce journey. So let's start with our quote. It's from Nelson Mandela. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Again, that was from Nelson Mandela. Who other than Nelson Mandela to teach us to overcome fear and frustration and anger and rise above all of that turmoil? I mean, I thought a 7-year high conflict divorce was the worst. He was in jail for over 2 decades. He rised above that and became a president of the same country where he was imprisoned. So think of that for a model to move forward. I mean, that's to me so encouraging. So well done, President Mandela. All right, our questions from Jillian. If you want to ask a question, you can leave us a voicemail at question.gettingdivorced.org. And we may answer, or I may answer your question on this podcast. Again, our questions from Jillian, who was so kind to ask this very vulnerable question. I find myself in a challenging marriage. My husband struggles with being a good father. We are like two ships passing in the night. We communicate mainly through email or text messages. I've been contemplating divorce, but the thought fills me with fear. I voice my concerns about his negative impact on our family, and the advice I've received from my family is to be patient and not take his words to heart due to his battle with depression. I'm uncertain if I possess the strength to proceed with a divorce. My younger daughter, with tears welling up in her eyes, asked me a heart-wrenching question one night. She said, "Mom, what would happen if you and Dad were to divorce? I wouldn't know who to choose. You're so kind to me, and so is Dad." I find myself at a crossroads, wondering whether to act or remain still, realizing that my decision could alter someone's life. I'm just burdened with guilt for not progressing in this situation. Again, thank you, Jillian, for really, submitting that vulnerable question. And what really strikes my heart is your daughter. That's why I got into this field. I was 8 years old where I learned about divorce, and it is turmoil for children. Now, back when my parents went through divorce, they didn't have the services that they have now. And one thing I wish my family did, and what maybe you can do, is have your child go to therapy to explore these issues in an appropriate way. But what I will say, Jillian, is I'm not 100% sure, but I think the research shows that it's better to move on from a toxic marriage than stay in one for the children's sake, because the children learn love and how to relate in intimate relationships through their parents. And if they see toxic relationship with their parents, especially how they interact with each other in front of them, that's the model that the children will use in their own intimate relationships, unless they do hard work, really hard work to grow, to change ingrained patterns. So my suggestion to you, Jillian, is that's not necessarily a reason to stay. You could stay if things change, but don't just grin and bear it out thinking that's necessarily better for the children. It might not be. So that's step one. Step two, yes, a divorce may be difficult, may be really difficult, but you're not going through this alone. I want you to think of something scary, maybe jumping out of an airplane. That's what I can think of that's pretty scary. You have to have that fear, the heights. You don't know what it's going to feel like. There might be motion sickness. You might not even land on the ground. So there's all this anxiety and stress. But it's also thrilling in some ways because you're looking forward to that journey, just like maybe moving from a divorce has all those feelings, strong feelings, but it's also thrilling to think about what the future holds. And just like maybe your first parachute jump out of a plane, you don't do it alone. You do it with someone who has done these jumps probably over 1,000 times or more in this, a tandem, I think they call it. And likewise, you have a divorce attorney who can help you, especially if you have a trusted advisor who can support you through this process. And I want you to understand one thing that's important about getting a divorce. You have to understand who we are dealing with. I always tell people an agreement is only as good as the person you enter into it with. Maybe just like a marriage is only as good as the person you marry. And we have to make a distinction between two main populations. One population wants to be, rational, wants to do the right thing, wants to listen to experts, might have some stress, anxiety, anger, all that's normal, but is willing to be open and to compromise and to move forward with their lives and not act out necessarily by dragging out a divorce for years to come. I want you to think of that. That's the mediation model. That's the collaborative divorce model. And you can think of that sort of like a boxer. A boxer is well trained. There's certain rules. If you box someone, they're not going to kick you. There's a referee in the room or in the ring, just like a mediator's in the room. So there's certain rules, right, with a boxer. And I want you to think of court, and especially litigation, at worst, can be like a street fight where there really is no rules. You don't know what the other side's going to do. They might really bring out some weapons. It could be nasty. And that's the difference. A boxer versus a street fighter. Mediation, collaborative divorce, maybe even a negotiated agreement where everyone's trying to do a reasonable result, versus are you getting divorced from a street fighter that might drag on for 5 to 10 years? That's the concern. And we don't know. We don't know. And that's, I think, the scariest thing I would fear for you and for your children. Is it going to be one of those? And I don't want you to think just because you have a difficult spouse, it's necessarily going to be that. But that's the concern. Just like if you jump out of the plane, there is a chance, I don't know what percent chance, but a very small percent chance that parachute's not opening. That's a chance you take. And they probably have precautions. They might have a backup, but that's still a chance. Just like you get divorced, there's always a chance that it could be just a nasty brawl. And I hope you don't go through that. And I do think, though, that if you are in a toxic marriage and your children are concerned, therapy for them is always helpful. And try to make some changes in your marriage. Develop stronger boundaries if that's what you want to stay in, or do the hard work necessary to move on. So I hope that's helpful, Jillian. And I know this is a really difficult decision to make. And it might take time. It might take time. Let me give you an example from divorce news I saw. We all remember the slap heard around the world. Will Smith protecting his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, when Chris Rock had a joke about her. And what did we learn really recently? Well, they have been separated, I believe, since 2016. I think that's 6 or 7 years. So all this time, they had the public persona of a intact, close marriage, but it really was not a real marriage. And maybe, Jillian, that's what you want. Maybe it's more important having that public persona. People don't really know what's going on in your home. Right? People don't really know. On the other hand, if you want a real relationship, a loving home, someone you could really trust in, where you feel so comfortable and supported and your needs are met, that's not a public persona marriage. That's a different situation, and you have to make that choice. All right, so let's move to our coaching corner, Jillian. Since you asked me about fear and moving on, here are some thoughts I want to give you. First of all, you want to surround yourself with courageous people or courageous information to empower you. Sort of like you're immersing yourself in a new way of thinking. And you can do that by reading books, courageous stories, people who have, pain, like Nelson Mandela, YouTube videos. There's always something out there, someone overcome a obstacle. And if you want to get a little bit deeper, you could maybe do a on-demand conference, pay for it, not just free. There's these on-demand conferences like a 4-hour video on something that was a taped conference that you could really learn a little bit more. There's the audio programs. That's a really great way. And if you want to step up, I don't know if you have the luxury, going to a conference, maybe a day conference, half a day. Most people can't do that. But I think the important thing you're missing from doing it on demand or virtually is the people. And that's all I would like to see. I don't know if these virtual conferences have an opportunity, maybe a Facebook group or some type of community, but the community is important. And that's another thing. What about groups? Is there groups out there of other people who are going through similar situations? That may help you. And I think there probably are these communities. But I think that would be a good first, second step. The third step is taking real action. And you want to challenge yourself each day. I suggest challenge yourself in small increments. We're just looking for 1% change over maybe a day, a week, a month. We're not looking for big changes. So for example, if right now you can only do 2 push-ups, maybe today's challenge is just to do 1 push-up for the whole week, just 1 push-up for the whole week. And then next week, 2. Next week, the third week, 3 push-ups a day, every day, 7 days. And it will gradually increase. And that gradual increase, you'll get stronger on a pace that will work for you. And then soon you will be able to do 25 push-ups, even though you really can't do it today. That's the strength I am hoping you're going to have as you go through this journey, because it's going to be difficult, but you're going to get better. You're going to get stronger. And the vision you have for that better post-divorce life is going to push you through those hard days. Also, this podcast is going to push you through the hard days. If you are new to this podcast, Jillian, we have an archive you can check out. A lot of people use this resource more like a library. Like sort of like reminds me of when you want to buy an appliance, you might do deep dive research, but when you're not buying that appliance, you're not thinking about it. And that's my hope here. You will learn some information, have a divorce, and move on with your life. All right, that's all for me. I'm Corey Shapiro. I'm your friendly divorce coach, helping you get creative and not reactive in your divorce.
Thank you for tuning in to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast with divorce coach Corey Shapiro. Divorce can be a difficult and overwhelming process, but it doesn't have to be. Corey's book, Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind, is here to help you gain clarity, composure, and a strategic mindset. Get it now as an ebook on Amazon or an audiobook on Audible, and unlock the power of these resources to make more informed decisions and gain better understanding of the process. This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.